Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Hello, welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made the trip. We got our friend Reverend Will here this evening, and got DanK or Dan, and we're out swimming through the malarkey.
To get here,
yeah, swimming through the Oregon rain to get here. We've got a few stories that we were talking about. We wanted to left over from last week. Want to discuss briefly. The main one was the bust down in Southern Oregon, the High Hopes farm, where the feds went and busted a grow that was in compliance with state law, and yet the feds went down and busted him, busted the whole place. And by the way, the state's making money on this too. They not only are helping the feds in their operations, but each patient is going to have to spend $50, thanks to the state of Oregon, to get another grower. So the state's making money off it without even hardly doing anything on this deal. But anyway, that story about it is that the feds want to confiscate the property. It says the federal government this week moved to take Coos and Jackson County properties associated with 3 separate Oregon medical marijuana operations, including the High Hopes farm. The forfeiture filings are part of the government's ongoing investigations into marijuana possession, manufacturing, and distribution. The federal government may seize assets that are used to commit a crime. Authorities are seeking 2 parcels of land on Upper Applegate Road in Jackson County, where James Bowman grew marijuana under the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program. The longtime marijuana producer rented the properties, which were raided in September by federal agents. See, that brings up an interesting question. The feds have been sending warning letters out to all these operations to the landlords of the properties, saying that they might lose their property. Right. I don't know who owns this property, but apparently he wasn't concerned with that, and yet now they're going after the property. So
right. Well, see, that's one of the things about the federal government. They get to waffle.
And I know, and they could do all this. And that fact that goes on here, Bowman, who was CEO, has not been charged with a crime. They're going after the property, but they haven't even charged him yet, much less convict him. So that's the American way, you know. That's what, yeah. It's
not my American way.
You know, it's like the bumper sticker. You know, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention.
Right.
So yeah, anyway, James Bowman had a great operation, very organized. He actually published a color catalog for his patients.
I'd love to get that. Bring it
They could pick out their strain. He could actually have pictures. He could pick out your strain and get exactly what you want.
With information about what the strain did and stuff, right?
And some of them were certified through the M scale. Remember the M scale?
Right.
Certified through that.
Dan, this is one of those things where only those people who have actually had involved processes with the government knows exactly how bad that scenario is. That, I mean, understand, we want to do research. I mean, we're dying to do research on herb, and we still take it upon ourselves to do some research, like this strain research. We're not allowed to do that, you know, not according to the law and the way it's written. And yet the whole thing is that people think that we've got it made because we have the opportunity to get marijuana. Well, understand, folks, this thing about getting marijuana is really a joke because there is no enforcement policies in effect. Okay, if the guy is growing for you says, oh man, I got a great crop, I'm going to take this, I'm going to go to Amsterdam, I'm going to come back, you know, I mean, it's like, oh yeah, I want to show this off because it's so good. The patient has nothing that they can do about it. The police don't want to hear about it. You know, the Attorney General's office doesn't want to hear about it. And yet these are the agencies that are supposed to be protecting us. And the state, at this point, is supposed to be helping us to attain the goal, which is to get herb. But if you can't start growing it until you get your card, you have less than 12 months already that you're going to be being served, getting your herb. Because it takes 3 months, so you cut that off right at the beginning. So you have a 12-month process, now you have a 9-month process.
Yeah, and this bust here that affected 200 patients. A good friend of mine is a patient to High Hopes. She was about ready to get her yearly medicine,
Right.
and now the feds took it. Now she's without. And
They always wait until just before
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
harvest time,
Yeah.
right at harvest time.
and now that there are more and more dispensaries being shut down, for instance, Cannabism locally,
Right.
Patients are having less and less places to go to get their medicine. I just found out, of course, this has been in the works for a while. Of course, I just found out about it. Lynn Benton, OPP out of Albany,
Yeah.
they're closing down. They're going to close down. They're keeping their clinic open. They're keeping the clinic open, but they're shutting down the resource center until after the first of the year. So there's another resource dried up. So we got more and more patients that don't have their medicine, looking for their medicine, and the resources are continually drying up between the feds and people just dropping out. And, you know, Water Power shut down. They lost their billing August 31st.
Right. So, you know, later we're going to talk about Colorado and Washington and how the police feel about this, actually.
Well, we'll talk about that now. In fact, I was going to mention that. I don't have any stories on it, but as of the last I heard, there were 6 counties in Washington that have dropped pot prosecutions.
Pot prosecutions.
Yep.
Well, that's on the good side. On the bad side, they're talking about how they're expecting more people to be on the road driving stoned. Well, understand if you keep closing down the dispensaries and stuff and shutting off ways for people to get the herb, they're going to go to Washington. They're going to go to Colorado, and they're going to get it and bring it back here, which means you're putting them on the road. Okay, we had them all taken care of, all happy and stuff, and being able to sit at home and be taken care of and you know, consume things, so they have to go out and buy things, being a part of our society. And all of a sudden now, because we don't have our agencies that were helping us, Cannabism for one, High Hopes for another, you know, these people had good intentions and were doing good things.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
now
yeah.
they're looking at being prosecuted and losing material possessions without being charged or convicted, which is supposed to be against our amendment rights.
Yeah.
Hey, enjoy, enjoy.
I have a letter here from it's in the Registered Guard, a letter to the editor.
You want me to read Jeremy's and then
Yeah.
you can read your response? All right, marijuana defeat was unexpected. In light of the recent failure of state ballot measure 80, I have found myself curious as to whether other Oregonians are as surprised as I am that we didn't legalize marijuana. In my experience, Oregon, and especially Eugene, is a place where marijuana is used frequently. If recreational marijuana laws passed anywhere, I would have expected Oregon to be first. I also have to wonder, given Colorado and Washington voters choosing to legalize marijuana, if our nation is on the brink of an epic change in regard to our views on the personal use of marijuana.
That's right. That was signed by Jeremy Beat. I was in the Registered Guard on the 18th. I've written an answer to that, and I haven't published it yet, but I'm still looking. They may. I have pretty good luck in getting my letters published. I wrote, in answer to Jeremy Beat's letter to the editor, marijuana defeat was unexpected. We thought it would be close, and it was. We lost with 47%. Might be 48% before it's done. That's incredible. That's the biggest percentage we've ever had on a cannabis issue in the state of Oregon. Multnomah, Lincoln, Benton, and Lane counties passed it. Multnomah was 60%. We did this with no money to speak of. We had no national support, very little local money, and the baggage of having a chief sponsor laden with a perceived bad reputation. We expect the Oregon legislature, led by the law enforcement lobby, led by retired law enforcement now legislatures, to attempt to fix what they perceive to be problems with the Oregon medical marijuana program. So we will have to expect our limited resources to fight them off. We'll have to expend our limited resources to fight them off and make some progress actually improving the program and moving forward on ending the prohibition. Not to worry, Jeremy, despite the movement's dysfunction and lack of funds, we are winning the end to the war on the plant.
Well, you know, one of those things, I really want to let Washington and Colorado people know this, that we actually had industrial hemp legalized here in this state. And some people think, and have talked to us before, about how they felt. Oh, well, it's legal in Oregon, isn't it? And we're, no, industrially it's legal. But once again, the feds putting their footprint into things tell us that we can't really grow herb unless we have a hemp tax stamp. And we can't get the hemp tax stamp without having a sample. And you can't get a sample without growing it, which would be illegal. So with that catch-22 put out by the government, we're saying, where are our legislators and their heads when they can't see what we can see so easily, and we're not in the position of representing us? See, they asked to be in the position of representing us, and yet at the same time, they don't want to hear from us because this is not a winnable cause. This is what I've heard from the ACLU for years here in town. Dave Fidanki and his crew have told me straight up, unless it's a winnable situation, we really cannot be interested in taking it on because we don't have the money to do so. How do you like that, folks? There's some rights being bartered away.
Yep. Yeah, and this is a quick note here. The whole website's too long to try to read to you on the air, but basically if you go to petitions.whitehouse.gov, there's petitions there that people have set up to sign. And this one is, support a law protecting states' rights to legalize, regulate, and tax marijuana like alcohol. So if you can think of it, go to the website petitions.whitehouse.gov and check out those petitions and sign any that are applicable and you support.
We got less than 2 minutes.
Okay, so, and we got some more stories here, and we're going to be talking about the movement. I really encourage people to get active, join any local groups, go to local meetings. I've noticed attendance has been really bad off in the last, I don't know, year or so. It's always been hard to get people to come to meetings, but
you know, Dan, once again, like we were talking before we started the show today about how one of the things we're going to do is put it on the Eugene Weekly's calendar that this is happening, when it's happening, so that people will know more. We're also going to reach out more ourselves to the different groups in the state and around the country, like MPP and other groups, so that we can once again let them know what we're doing and see whether or not they want to promote it amongst their people for us. So these are some of the things that we're doing. We're talking about getting a camera crew together and being able to go out and talk to the mayor and talk to the police chief and go to Salem and talk to some of the legislators and ask them, how come if we have this wonderful discrimination-free zone, we're not freely, unless it means that you can freely discriminate against people, because, I mean, it happens to us all the time, so.
that's right. We have great resources here at Community TV 29. It's only $10 a year to join. You can check out cameras.
Please, yeah.
You could even produce your own show like we have. So anyway, we'll talk about some more of that next time. So we're going to back out and we'll talk to you in the next break. So take it easy. We are.
There you go.
Welcome back. You got Reverend Will and Dan here, or DanK, and we were talking about some stories pertaining to cannabis legalization and things of that nature.
Right.
This is another story by Philip Smith. This is from the StopTheDrugWar.org, excellent organization and excellent website, titled Marijuana Legalization, What Will the Feds Do? And it's interesting because even though it's begun legalized statewide, it's still illegal federal-wise, and so puts it into an interesting situation, but look at death with dignity. We went through the same thing with the death with dignity. The Fed said that it was illegal and you couldn't do it, and then we ended up passing a law and we're doing it. So the cannabis issue is very similar.
Well, I've always thought it was, but you know, I don't know where that originated from, that we were able to turn that around, because I've been asking people to connect with the Attorney General's office, because my understanding is now it's she, Ellen Rosenblum, and I'm so happy that she's in there, and I'm really hoping that she's happy to have us as supporters, that, you know, the Attorney General's office is supposed to interpret the law for the state and to enforce that law. Now, if that's not true, fine, I'll back off this whole issue. But if it is true, let's just say it is true, then we have the ACLU who says they can't take on a cause without it being winnable. And we have the Attorney General's office who has a law that's been written that says that the medical marijuana patients are supposed to be given their medicine. Yet the only thing that the state does is sit in an office and keep track of us and take money and make it so it's harder for us to get than it was before. I mean, before we would go to somebody, pay that money and get herb, and we would know exactly what we were getting and when we were getting it. Now, the thing is that you have no backups, you have no way of enforcing the fact that the patients are the owners of the herb, and that the people who are doing the work are actually doing it out of the goodness of their heart, other than having some money that can be given to them to help them with parts and things like that, like the lights and the paying for the electricity and the fertilizer and actually, you know, getting the product, clones. So it's interesting that the law needs to be revamped, and not by this ACMM or anything that has this vested interest in keeping it illegal, which is law enforcement. They definitely have, you know, like when we're talking about them taking away somebody's property before they've been convicted, before they've even been charged. I mean, these things are against the basic principles that this country was founded on. It's one of the reasons we left England in the first place, was because that kind of taxation was happening to us without permission. Now it's the same thing here. We have to pay a doctor to recommend that we can use this medicine. The doctor cannot even prescribe it as a medicine. So if he's not prescribing it, what is he recommending?
He's not recommending, actually. The state of Oregon, is what they're doing is they're reviewing medical records to verify that you have a medical condition that allows you to use marijuana medically in the state of Oregon. So he's not even recommending.
Well, he is when he signs it, though, because
all he's doing is verifying that you have a medical condition. That's why the law was written that way, specifically to keep the doctors out of trouble.
So what do you call it when he's going validating the injury itself? I mean, he's not sitting there with a CAT scan or...
No, he reviews medical records. So you got to have medical records within the last 3 years to document your ailment.
Yes, I understand that.
And then he reviews the medical records and then does an examination and an interview, and that's how it's... and that's why a lot of people say, well, Oregon has a prescription. Well, no, it's not a prescription. And then, anyway, but anyway, the thing is, what are the feds going to do? That's a big question. And by the fact, I mean, it's a bummer that Oregon didn't pass it, didn't legalize, but at the same time, it's kind of good because now we have Colorado and Washington both legalized. Now we can kind of see what they're going to do, what the feds do about that.
I'm sorry, I just don't like waiting to see what the feds are going to do.
I don't either. I don't either, but at the same time, it's not a bad thing because they have two completely different systems. So it'll be interesting to see how each of their systems work, it doesn't work, see what the feds do. And hopefully in 2014, we'll come back with our own initiative and be improvements on what we have already in Washington and
it might be dead before
Colorado.
2014.
Pardon me?
I might be dead before 2014.
Oh, I know. I agree. Well, I know. I know. And that's another thing too. Back in the late 90s, I couldn't get my peers to even consider legalization because they kept saying that the polls were high enough. It wasn't worth working on it. And I couldn't get anybody, my legalization activists, actually interested in working on legalization. It was very frustrating. And now here, and I said at the time, I said, well, let's wait till 2020 because I have a great slogan. 420 in 2020, what a great slogan. Well, here we are, folks. It's 2012. We still aren't there. We're looking at minimum 2014. We're getting closer to, we may make 420 in 2020 yet. So my slogan may still work.
Cool.
But anyway, yeah, that's what we're stuck with, and that's just the way it is. And then as I've been talking about, the dysfunctionality within the movement is rampant. It's amazing. That's amazing that we've gotten to where we have with the way things are. There's meetings going on right now. There's been 3 statewide meetings, all out of the Eugene area, 1 on the coast, 2 in Portland, which I haven't been able to make any of them because of the distance. And they're discussing what they're going to do and what they're going to do with the legislature and proposals, and all this has been discussed, and I'm completely out of the loop, and as is everybody else, except the ones that are actually in the meetings. So it's just, anyway, it just goes on and on and on, the lack of communication, and it just continually amazes me how well we've done with what little or how bad shape we are in.
To me, when I talk about discrimination, I mean, to me it's really clear whether you call it validation by going through the records or whatever, we're not being prescribed medicine that everybody else, when they go through their doctor's appointments and stuff and they get their medicine, they're allowed to do it without having such invasive maneuvering on the part of the government. I mean, states' rights are supposed to trump federal law because that's why we moved here in the first place, was we had one common point, which was the king, who was telling us what to do and how to do it and where to do it. Now, is that just moved so that we have another king who's telling us what we can do and stuff, even though he gets a stamp of approval or not by this agency called Congress? Because, I mean, when you're not prescribed medicine, that's discrimination. Okay, whether you're going to call it validation or like I was trying to do there, it's just a matter of these things. It's a crime. I mean, understand this, the way we're being treated by the federal government is a crime. We've had a war declared on us. Nobody's paying attention to that. We're being discriminated against on a daily basis. Nobody's paying attention to this. You go to the ACLU, it's not a winnable situation, they're not interested. You go to your mayors, you go to your congresspeople, you go to the attorney general, and they're all going, well, this is the best that we can do. I'm sorry, folks. Understand, if I were a child right now, believe me, I would be somebody who would be very angry, and I would not be listening to a word that you're saying because your word is useless. It counts for nothing.
So back to the federal deal, it says here, so far the federal response has been muted. The White House has not commented, the Office of National Drug Policy Control has not commented, and the Department of Justice has limited its comments to observing that it will continue to enforce the Federal Controlled Substances Act. It says, my understanding is that justice was completely taken aback by this and by the wide margin of passage, said Eric Sterling, former counsel to the House Judiciary Committee and currently the executive director of the Criminal Justice Policy Foundation. They believe this would be a repeat of 2010, and that they are really kind of astonished because they understand this is a big thing politically and a complicated problem legally. People are writing memos thinking about the relationship between federal and state law, doctrines of preemption, and what might be permitted under the UN Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs.
See, for me, the government's been the bully in this whole process. That last line right there in the White House and the UN Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, I mean, the reason that other countries haven't allowed the sales and I mean, we have $41 million that was just shown on TV the other day that was brought in containers off the coast. You know, they were all on these ships and stuff, just filled with money. So what did the government do with that money? Did they put it into taking care of people who have drug addictions? I don't think so. You know, so it's just, it's ridiculous that it says right here that, you know.
They spend it on toys for law enforcement.
Yeah, that's true, you know. It's like they say, what is clear is that marijuana remains illegal under federal law. In theory, an army of DEA agents could swoop down on every joint smoker in Washington or pot grower in Colorado and haul them off to federal court and thence to federal prison. But that would require either a huge shift in Justice Department resources or a huge increase in federal marijuana enforcement funding, or both. And neither seems likely. More likely is selective, exemplary enforcement aimed at commercial operations, said one former White House anti-drug official. So that's what we talked about before. If it leaves the state, then it becomes interstate. And if it's intrastate, then the federal government has a right to jump in there because we're talking about commerce. But as long as we keep it within our state, they're supposed to butt out.
That's what they said they were going to do, which they're not, but that's what they said they were going to do, right after the first election of Obama.
And like you said, Washington has already released some people because they're going, it doesn't make any sense for us to try and prosecute these people when it's legal now. It's going to be legal, I guess, on the 5th or 6th of
January.
January.
6th of December. Yeah, and yeah.
December in Washington, you're right.
Yeah.
And then
like I've been saying all along, even when the medical law became in act, the cat's out of the bag, you know, and it's not going back. So it's all going to get better. So, but it's frustrating right now.
Well, yeah, it's like it says here, not every clinic in California has been raided, but justice has successfully made the point that federal law trumps.
Yep.
That's not true, folks. It's supposed to go from us to the state and the state to the feds as far as how laws are supposed to be enacted, and it's supposed to be to protect us, and we don't need protection from pot. As a matter of fact, we need to embrace pot because it's one of those things that helps with cancer, it helps with liver problems, it helps with PTSD, and we need to make this difference and shift whether it's accepted legally or not.
That's right. So we got to wrap it up here, and we definitely need some help, so please contact us. My email address to the website, I understand, isn't working, so use my email address, my personal email address, dankuzer@yahoo.com. We need help. We need tech people. We need people at the studio to help. If you're ticked off about the situation as much as we are, come and join us, because we definitely need to stand up.
There you go.
So I appreciate it and your time, and we'll hope to talk to you soon.
Take care.